Thank you. Hello, thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Lola. Great to be here, thanks for having me. As Lola said, my name's Lucy and I work for a company called Dovetail. This is us, aren't we cute? So Dovetail is a startup based in Sydney, Australia, and we build a suite of products to help teams understand their customers and ultimately use that customer understanding to build better quality things, whether that's a product or a service or experience. We're about 70-ish or 75 people today and growing, mostly in Sydney. We also have just opened an office in San Francisco, and we just recently raised our Series A funding. We have 3 products on the market today. Markup is our qualitative data analysis tool. It's used by designers and researchers who are running customer research. Playback is our insights repository tool. The primary users are typically people like product managers and designers who are using research to make decisions in their roles. And finally, Backstage is our participant management tool, and that's used by people doing research operations. And we actually have a 4th product in the works, which I'm not going to get into now, but if you're interested in that, I'm happy to talk more about that later. But even though this growth, we've grown a lot over a short period of time, we obviously didn't start with 3 products. In fact, when I started at Dovetail just over 2 years ago, we had one pretty simple product on the market, which was an analysis tool called Dovetail. And we were about 10 people in a shared office space in Surrey Hills in Sydney, and we had just raised a small amount of money in our seed round. So the story that I want to tell you today is how we went from this small team building a point solution to an entire company building a platform of tools to help teams understand their customers, and how we took a design-led approach to doing this. So this talk isn't really about how to grow a company, although if that is something that you're doing, I hope you can learn something from our experience. But what I really want to focus on today is the lessons that I learned over the past 2 years about communicating a product and design vision and rallying the team around that vision. So when I first started at Dovetail 2 years ago, we were working on our video transcription feature, where you can upload a recording of a customer interview and it automatically transcribes that, and you can use that to do your analysis. And that was a huge differentiating feature for the product. It still is today. We knew we wanted to grow our product offering, but we were asking ourselves, what's the next big thing that we're going to build to grow this product? So what we did was we went into a big generative research project with the goal to understand the research landscape. So we spoke to customers, non-customers, churned customers in all different roles like designers, researchers, product managers, leadership roles. And as I said, the goal was to understand the research landscape. So we asked teams, how they think about research, how they approach research, how they collaborate on research, how they share it, how they store it. We weren't really asking them how they use Dovetail, the product, at that point in time. And from there, we went into a series of design sprints, and we actually involved the entire company in those design sprints, which was about 12 people at the time. And we came up with a handful of opportunities for how we could grow our product. And this was a huge investment for our team at the time to pause the entire company for a couple of weeks and get everyone involved in design sprints was a big deal. These photos here are actually the entire company, about 12 people doing some design ideation and some sketching, which was pretty fun. But we felt like it was really important to get everyone involved in that journey, get everyone's input on how we were going to grow the company and get their buy-in. So as I said, we came up with a handful. There were about 5 big opportunities for how we could grow the product. And as a very ambitious team, we wanted to build all of them, but with 12 people, that's obviously not possible. So a smaller group of us discussed which ideas were worth investing in at that point in time. And there was one opportunity in particular that fit really well with what we had already built in the product. So we had built this strong analysis tool, and now our customers needed a way to tell a story around their insights and share that with their stakeholders, so their stakeholders could understand the output of that research. So we came up with an idea for a feature called collections, and this is some early sketches of collections. And this here are the high fidelity mock-ups. So collections was a very flexible feature, and it was a way to pull together quotes and video clips from customer research and display them in a way with some hierarchy and some context, and easily share that with your stakeholders. So your stakeholders could come in, they could play the video clips, they could interact with the quotes, and they could understand the outcomes of that research project. And as I said, collections was designed to be a very flexible feature, so it was tackling multiple different use cases. A collection could be used to create a research report, it could be used to gather different data points during desk research, and it could be used to organize insights in a way that you might use a folder structure. So we also didn't want our customers to create long-form research reports because we felt like that didn't really differentiate us from the competition. So we came up with this idea to make the feature feel more like a Pinterest board, like you were collecting these different data points and displaying them in a more engaging format, rather than an editor experience where people might feel encouraged to write long blocks of text. So we came up with this idea for this feature, and our team felt super aligned, super bought into the idea. We were really excited, and we decided to kick off building an MVP of collections in order to help us validate this idea. And then we got into the weeds of actually building the feature, and when that happened, things started to change. As we unpacked the technical complexities of our idea, along with the conceptual complexities, along with the other objects we had in the product, we needed to iterate on the idea, we needed to de-scope, and we needed to make compromises in order to ship that MVP. And that's completely normal with product development, right? It's normal to need to iterate on your feature over time. But the problem that we started to run into was our team started to become misaligned on how the feature was solving all those different use cases. And while I had buy-in from my team on the designs and the feature at the beginning of the project, I failed to continue to build buy-in with my stakeholders as the feature evolved. At the same time that this was going on, there was a lot happening at Dovetail. We had just gone into lockdown in Sydney. This was peak COVID times, so we were working from home for the first time. But more importantly, the company doubled in size as we were working on this feature. And we doubled in size across the board, but the team working on collections also doubled. So we had a handful of new engineers working on this feature. And the other thing that I failed to do was to bring these new engineers up to speed on what the problem was and how collections was solving that problem. And we kind of had this divide between people who had been involved in the design sprints and had all this context, and our new people who didn't have that bigger picture. And so the long story short is, over time the team became misaligned, they became unmotivated. We would argue over how smaller interactions would work with the feature, in particular this Pinterest board-like experience versus something like an editor experience. The feature ended up taking a lot longer to build than we anticipated, and as the leader of the project, I ultimately lost trust with the team. So what did we do? We ended up stripping the feature right back and just focusing on one of those use cases that I mentioned in order to just get something out the door, and then we shipped that. But the power of collections was lost, and it didn't really resonate with customers, and even after we had shipped something, the team didn't really believe that it was the right solution to all these different problems we were trying to solve. So what was meant to be this big celebration because we shipped this big new feature, this big differentiating feature for us, was actually a real low point for our team. And we were all in lockdown, so it was like quite depressing. But we decided to go back to the problems that we were trying to solve and the outcomes of the design sprint that had happened many months prior at this point. And we realized that collections was trying to be too much in one feature. The flexibility was quite confusing, and we were struggling to explain it to our team, which meant that there was no way that customers were going to be able to understand it, right? So we discussed the need for more purpose-built solutions to these different use cases. And we also started to discuss the idea of splitting the product into 2 products in order to help us focus on those different use cases, those different parts of the research journey, and ultimately what we realized were different primary users that we were trying to design for. And again, the team was quite excited. We felt aligned again. We were like, yes, splitting the product into 2 products will be the answer to our problems. But this time we decided to do something different. Instead of just jumping into building something, we decided to scrappily visualize the idea, the vision, in wireframe fidelity. And we did this to actually get on the same page as to what the idea was, what splitting the 2 products meant, and what the solutions to each of these different use cases was. But also to communicate this to our team and give them a chance to have input, give feedback, interact with the wireframes themselves, and using the wireframe fidelity to really rapidly iterate on our ideas. So, Benjamin, who's our CEO, Beck, one of our senior product designers, and myself, we jumped on a Google Meet call for a couple of days because we were in lockdown. We prefer to do things in person. And we got in a Figma file together, and we just started to create wireframes for all of the different ideas to solve these problems and opportunities that we've been talking about for, at this point, a year. And we went beyond our ideas encompassed in collections. We also wireframed ideas to the other opportunities that had come out of the design sprint the year before. And as we were going through this process, we pulled other people from the team into the Google Meet call, into the Figma file to get their feedback, have a discussion about it. And by visualizing these ideas, we were able to have a much richer discussion about what the ideas were and how they were solving the problems. The team was also able to kind of wireframe their own ideas and interact with the wireframes because they were so approachable. And we were able to evolve our thinking really quickly. So we worked on these wireframes for about 3 weeks in total, which is quite a long time for us. And we pulled our wireframes into an end-to-end interactive prototype so that the team could actually experience the product vision as opposed to us just telling them about it. And we found that a really effective way to get people to actually engage in the ideas and give their feedback. And at the end of this process, we found that we had not just come up with 2 new products, but we had actually come up with 5 new products, each targeting different use cases, solving different problems, aimed at different parts of the research experience, and importantly, targeting different primary users and different buyers. We really wanted our prototype to show the end-to-end experience, starting from signing up to a free trial from the marketing website, to experiencing the key features of the products, to upgrading your plan, and so on. So this forced us to wireframe the marketing website for these new products. And that meant that we had to articulate the value of the product in the go-to-market messaging. And this was a really valuable technique for us. It's similar to a build-a-box exercise, if you've ever done that, where you define the value proposition and key features of your product as a way to validate your ideas before you even have any physical product. So this is just an example of one landing page for one of our products. And we use this to get feedback on the team of the core value, the key features, and we iterated on this before we even jumped into mocking up the key features of the product. We also used this to get feedback from customers on new products before even jumping into design. And we found that this is a really valuable asset to keep as you bring new people onto the team, because it's really a very detailed one-pager of what the value of the product is, what the key features are, who the buyer is, and who the primary users are. So this is something that we continue to do as we think about new products and new features. And of course, our vision is still always changing. We're always learning new things and constantly iterating on our ideas. This prototype that we created was a really valuable asset for us, still is. And we want to keep it up to date. So as a small team, we don't really have capacity to take one designer or 3 designers off the roster every 6 to 12 months when the vision changes significantly enough that the prototype is out of date. So our design team is constantly updating our prototype. Throughout this whole experience, we created our own wireframe component library in Figma, and we're also always updating and adding to this, just as we do our design system. And every time our designers work on a new feature or they evolve part of the prototype, they start in wireframe fidelity for the exact same reasons that we built the prototype in the first place, to quickly iterate on the direction of the feature, get buy-in and feedback from the team, and to communicate that direction. So here is just a quick screenshot of one of my designers' Figma files, Rowan. He was working on a feature, and you can see that he's just quickly mocking up ideas in this wireframe fidelity, getting feedback from the team. And then when the designers feel confident in the direction and they feel ready to move into a higher fidelity, they contribute these wireframes back into the prototype. So the prototype becomes this living, ever-evolving asset that we can continue to use to align the team. And it's particularly a really useful asset for new hires because we're hiring so much. When people join the company, they can look at the prototype, play around with it, experience it, and they can understand where we're heading as a company, as opposed to reading maybe a blog that was written 3-6 months ago that's a little bit out of date. So this has been a really great technique for us that has worked really well, and something that we continue to contribute to. So it's quite difficult to summarize learnings over the past 2 years in 20 minutes, but to just quickly recap, getting buy-in from your stakeholders is so incredibly important to the feature's success, and it's not a one and done. Getting buy-in from stakeholders is something that you have to continuously work towards as features evolve. Scrappily visualizing ideas in wireframe fidelity is a great way to get that buy-in and communicate ideas and get the team to engage in those ideas. And the wireframe fidelity also means that you can move quite quickly and evolve your thinking. And articulating your ideas in your go-to-market messaging is another great way to align your team, but also to validate those ideas with customers, and using that as an asset to bring new hires and new people who join the team up to speed. And then finally, continually iterating on the vision. At previous companies I worked at, a vision could be like a very fancy video that takes 3 months to produce, and it's very ambitious, but it sort of immediately becomes out of date, which is then sort of a waste of effort. So continuing to update that vision asset in a scrappy way has been really useful for us. So our story definitely is not over yet. We're really just getting started on our multi-product vision. We have a lot of work to do. But whether you're working on growing a company or a product or a service or a feature, I hope that there's something that you can take away from our experience evolving our direction and communicating that to our team over time. And I would love to hear what others are doing to solve this problem. Thank you very much for listening.